Sam Rayner, who, yes, is one of my three sons, my oldest son, and I are kind of statistical nerds. Um, he got his PhD in leadership research where he had to take a boatload of statistical studies. He does so much of our research. I got to tell you something about me. I accidentally picked up a statistics minor in college. How do you do that? I took so many electives, I didn't realize I was picking up a minor because I love the statistic courses so much. So we're kind of a statistics nerd family, particularly Sam and I. We're that. And we're going to share with you a good resource today called the uh, Association of Religious Data Archives. I'm going to only hit one part of it. It's just got so much information. I thought I'd just feature that. I love that we have this kind of quick podcast where I can feature one thing and then that's it, and you can move on to the next thing or the rest of your day. Well, you are at the Church Answers podcast, and of course, I'm Thom Rayner, and always our sponsor. If you haven't heard me say this, you know it is Belay Solutions. Belay is doing a great job of providing virtual workers in a variety of areas: virtual assistants, virtual bookkeepers, virtual webmasters. They are doing so much to come alongside ministries and organizations and do all the back end work and do all of the work that you don't have to do. They match you up so well. I've been advocating this download that they have. You probably heard me talk about it. The 25 tasks a pastor can delegate to an assistant. This is good for pastors and anybody that just needs some help to get doing the main things. So get that download. You can see it in the show notes, or you can look at belaysolutions.com/Thom Rayner. Okay. This is one statistical nerd talking to, and I have no idea who you are, but whether or not you are a statistical nerd, this information is really, really fascinating. It is provided by, it is called the Association of Religious Data Archives. That is not the most compelling title in the world. But again, when statisticians put numbers together, they're more fascinated by the data that they've collected, assimilated, and segregated than to worry about, some kind of cool title. But we've got the link to this, and I want you to be able to look at it. It has a lot of ways that you can look at religious data. I mean, you can look at it as a nation, you can look at a city, a metropolitan area. I've been fascinated by county data, and I'm just going to focus on that. Just go when you go to the site, you can just look at the drop-down menu and look it up by county. And let me just tell you what you can find within the counties. So here's some examples. One, the number of religious bodies within that county. I am from Williamson County, Tennessee. I immediately went to my home county and I saw, okay, here are all the religious bodies. Look how many we have here. I don't have the number in front of me, so, and I'm not showing you anything that you're not seeing. So I said, I was surprised. I mean, I know that Williamson County, Franklin, Tennessee, which is a southern part of the Nashville metropolitan area, I know that we are part of the mythical Bible Belt, but the Bible Belt really doesn't exist in this area anymore. But it just showed me all the different religious bodies we had, and I had no idea. You may be interested in doing that. By the time we get into this podcast, I'll tell you why you may be interested. Uh, Number two, it tells you what tradition they are a part of. I don't know if I've seen anybody aggregate and then compile according to tradition. So, for example, it could say that you're part of a mainline tradition or you're part of a Black Protestant tradition. So it breaks them down into different traditions, not in denominations, but into traditions. But it also provides denominational information as well. So you get that. And then you get the number of congregations within each tradition. Fascinating information. You're able to see not only the traditions, but the information within each tradition. And then the number of adherents. That's what these statisticians use for what I typically call church members. But again, the number of adherents. Okay, so Thom, you're telling me about some statistical information. I'm yawning. You've bored me to death. Why would I care about looking at information in my county that has religious bodies, their traditions, the number of congregations and information within each tradition, and the number of members and adherents? Let me give you just a couple of reasons. One reason is we need churches helping churches. And one of the ways that you can help churches, some of these churches may be in need of adoption, which means they may need to become a part of your family. They may be on the brink of closing the doors. And to know that you may come alongside them and to bring them into your church family as a different side of your church, maybe a different part of town, or even a different approach to worship. If you go through all this data here, you can begin to see, all right, I never heard of this tradition. I've never heard of these denominations. You go check them out. Maybe you can get to know some of the people there, and it gives you an opportunity to basically say, can I help? Is there anything I can do? And just for those who may not be familiar with the term, adoption means when one church becomes a part of another church family. Let me give you an example. I always use my son's example because I know I always have permission. Sam Rayner is the lead pastor of West Bradenton Church in Bradenton, Florida. They're about to add their third site. I believe the third one is a Mandarin Chinese congregation, but the second site is called Southside. And Southside is a congregation that was struggling, probably dying, and they asked for some help from Sam's church, West Bradenton. Members went in and provided music leadership. They didn't have a pastor, so provided an interim pastor, provided vacation Bible school and children's ministry. And eventually, Southside said, we would just like to join and be a part of West B. So West Bradenton then began to have a campus called Southside. And it was just Southside became a legal part of West Bradenton. They became a part of the family. West Bradenton adopted them. So that's one of the things you may get from this data. Are there some churches in my county? If my church is relatively strong, then I might be able to help. There's the inverse of that. If my church is really very weak, are there some churches I might be able to go to find help? A second thing is related closely to adoption, and we call it fostering. Adoption is when you bring a church into your family, and fostering is when you help a church for a season, usually under a year. And so while you're looking at these churches and this data, and you may be praying for opportunities to help churches in ministry, some of it may end up in adoption, resulting in adoption, bringing them into your family, or you may just help them for a season. In the case of Southside, West Bradenton, the larger, healthier church, fostered them first, helped them, provided music leadership, preaching leadership, children's leadership, and then at the request of Southside, they adopted them. So the fostering relationship in that example led to an adoption. My point in all of this, if you begin to look at the religious bodies within your county, just as an example, because I love that source of information, you can pray for those congregations. You can look to possibly help those denominations. And you can just get to know people that are part of the body of Christ even more so. So I would just encourage you to go and look at this information, the Association of Religious Data Archives. I just focused a little bit on the county. You may want to look at some other parts of it. Great source of information, not only for statistical nerds like me, but for people like you who have a heart for the Great Commission, the Great Commandment, and helping others. I want to thank Belay, as always, for being our sponsor. And I want to thank Belay for just being there when we started the Church Answers podcast and for being with us today. So we'll see you in the next episode of the Church Answers podcast. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just two. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just two or three things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis?
Double bingo. Well? And maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool there's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.